U sklopu Dustam podcasta zadovoljstvo mi je ugostiti internacionalno nagrađivanu slovensku novomedijsku umjetnicu Robertinu Šebjanič, s kojom ćemo pričati o spajanju umjetnosti, tehnologije i znanosti. Robertina, dobar dan i hvala ti što si izdvojila vrijeme za naš podcast.
Hvala i vama na zvanju. Ja se već ispričavam naprijed što ću cijeli intervju pričati više manje na engleskom jeziku jer mi je lakše, jer sam navikla više pričati o tome, ali toliko da se pozdravim i da kažem da kad radi radionice probam pričati hrvatski jer mi je lakše na dugi rok razlagati cijelu moju štoriju u engleskom jeziku.
Pa hvala ti, ja nisam očekivala da ćeš nas pozdraviti na hrvatskom, tako da sam oduševljena. Evo, ja bi prije svega bavila se malo tvojom pozadinom, kiparstvom i kako si uopće nastavila nakon tog obrazovanja baviti se novomedijskom umjetnosti i koliko ti je uopće pomoglo nekako formalno obrazovanje sa svime time.
I was studying sculpture in Ljubljana, and during my studies I was always already very intrigued and interested into a bit new media technologies or how to understand this kind of mixture between arts, science, and different ways how to work in interdisciplinary ways. So this was my kind of interest forever already. And during my exchange, because I went to exchange during my studies in Ljubljana to Sweden. So I stayed in Göteborg for 1 year, and this helped me to understand that, that I can broaden my knowledge and also the way how I work. Because there we had opportunities and possibilities to work with different software and hardware. First time I get to know Arduino, it was there, and so on. So I think it's always good, and this I would always say also to the young audience, which you have, that I would always encourage everybody to have, of course, good and strong connections in the country where you're coming from, but also to have these opportunities, to use these opportunities of international kind of travels and experiences, because we always like to complain about everything what is happening in our little gardens, but then when you move this and you go to somewhere else, you see that similar problems are happening all over, but there is always different ways how we deal with the same problems.
Baš mi je drago da si spomenula Erasmus, jer baš moje sljedeće pitanje je bilo vezano za tvoje djelovanje između humanističkih i prirodnih znanosti i htjela sam te zapravo pitati koliko Europa pruža u vidu institucija, mentora i nekakvih suradnji za razliku od svijeta i kako ti to sve vidiš?
I think that we are quite privileged to be living in Europe and have this opportunity to exchange between the countries without bigger problems, I would say. And there is some bigger platforms which they are really enabling this kind of collaborations. This is START, this other project of where UR Institut and Gino Šutić was also working here in Dubrovnik, and I was actually last year resident in Dubrovnik through that. And START is one of the biggest European platforms which is enabling different residencies. It's trying to give space for different interdisciplinary collaborative processes and projects. And there is also Horizon 2020. There is really different ways how you can engage in that. So there is lots of opportunities and possibilities for us living here. I have experience working also a lot in Mexico or some other countries, and I can say from first-hand experience that we are quite happy and lucky to be here. And I will always encourage everybody to look into all the possibilities and also to get informed, as I said, as I had this amazing opportunity to work with UR Institut and here in Dubrovnik with START, it's always opening the doors then further. Or a few years ago, I was together with Gino Šutić also part of the residency program of Ars Electronica, which is one of the biggest festivals of new media arts. It always happens in Linz in September. And the audience is huge, in 5 days there is like 100,000 people coming to see, of course not only your project, but there's around 1,000 other artists, scientists, engineers showing what they're doing. So being featured in these kind of places and just going there and visit is already very, very inspiring. It can give you also a better idea of what we can do in our lives. Either you want to be a scientist or artist or engineer or, I don't know, something completely else, but this creativity we can always take with us.
Budući da si surađivala sa UR Institutom i budući da tvoje poznanstvo sa Džinom Šutićem grebe desetljeće već sad, ja sam dobila nekakve insajderske informacije da se jako dobro snalaziš u Labosu i da zapravo poprilično dobro funkcioniraš u tom znanstvenom dijelu prilagodbe umjetničko instalacije i zapravo izložbe koje radiš samostalno i u suradnji s kolegama. Tako da me zanima zapravo, budući da se mi u STEM-u bavimo promicanjem tehnologije, inženjerstva, zanima me što misliš o toj tehničkoj strani i znanstvenoj strani projekata.
For me it was always important to understand how something is done, and also I like to have enough space that I can also experiment, because if I delegate this work to somebody else, I cannot change some stuff during the experimentation. And I think especially in vitro, this is when you do experimentations inside of the lab. Of course, I learned through this how to do the correct protocols, how many times you have to repeat the same thing, that you can actually have the scientific facts on one hand, and then on the other hand, what I learned is also, always when you're hands-on, you can repair the situation also, and you can also see if the experiment will go into the good ways or not, That's always very important to follow up. So, and then on the other hand, one thing is in my job, this like scientific research, or, then rethink how technically you will show that, or if there is some engineer needed or somebody who will program. And it's like, it's not that I would be an expert of all of this, but I know how to do it. So if I hire somebody or I invite somebody to collaborate with me, or I hire somebody to execute some specific task during the performance or installation, it's very important for me to have that possibilities, to understand that, and then the project can also run quicker and more smooth.
Iza tebe je obim projekata, izložbi i zapravo stvari kojima si se bavila, ali nekako u pozadini svega toga dok sam istraživala je more. I sad zanima me ta fascinacija morem, s obzirom da si ti iz Panonije, kako si rekla prije nego što smo...
Da, možda još u meni ostaje onaj staro more. Yes, I like to joke, that Pannonian Sea still resonates inside of my soul, and maybe that's why I like to come to the sea. But since I was a child, I was always fascinated, especially with aquatic environments, either river or stream or lake or water or ocean, or there was always this fascination with that. So I was always rethinking, shall I go to study marine biology or shall I be an artist and so on. So I have to say that I'm really happy, privileged, honored that I can work inside of my artistic expression and I can combine both of my passions,
Puno je nagrada naslovljeno na tebe. Također sam vidjela u pripremi da je Nasin odjel za astrobiologiju napisao članak o tebi, pa možeš li nam reći malo više o tome i zapravo bili se osvrnila na nekakve nagrade koje su ti posebno drage i bitne?
All these kind of awards and recognitions with the articles or being invited to specific places, of course, gives me also leverage that I can go further, that I can get also bigger grants or I get more invitations to do new projects. So this is always helpful for everybody, and it also gives you fuel to go further, you kind of feel that you're showing something to the people that I am doing something in correct way. So yeah, in 2016 I got like one of the first and bigger honorary mention, which is like award from Ars Electronica for a project where I was like researching jellyfish. Aurelia aurita is the name of it. Moon jellyfish, I think in Croatian is... What is moon jellyfish in Croatian?
Meduza?
Meduza, specifična vrsta je. Is the one which is like one of the most common ones. I can't remember what's the name. In Slovenian language we call them uhati klobučnjak.
Zvuči egzotično.
Da. Sounds fun, but yeah, so this was like, and it meant a lot to me because it was my first research, and I was like really working like quite hard for 2 years in collaboration with one scientist from Slovenia, with Dr. Alenka Malej, and then also with scientists in Turkey, in Izmir, in Marine Station, and so on. So there was like full on. So it was like very rewarding that this was kind of resonating also, and I got some awards and also some recognitions in wider audiences. So the work Embryonic Gardens was collaborative process of me, Ida Hirschenfelder and Aleš Hieng-Zergon. All of us together, we had this passion of like playing around with chemistry and trying to rethink the growth of the chemistry, because chemical and geology especially, like the stone, it takes much longer and it has another time scale, we called it. So what we developed was like a system of looking at the salts, how they are growing, this different components, and depends how they grow and how the color was developing on them, the sound in the space was changing. And so the soundscapes in 1 month of exhibition changes very slowly, accordingly towards the changes of the structure. And through this, we wanted to speak about this kind of slow pace of geological time, which is absolutely different than our time. So, and then this embryonics was like new word also, developed with group of scientists, and we kind of referred to them in our text of the project, and they found us and they asked us if they can publish us, and they actually invited us also, and we are part of one COST platform, which is like a platform for connecting between different interdisciplinarity of science. So, and we are like really abnormality instead of that, because we are one of the rare artist groups which is taking part in that, and it's also something which gives us also joy to to understand that arts is not only something which is pretty or beautiful, but we can also go into the topics which they are harder or not pleasant, but it's important for society to go through them, and bringing this into the science which has to deal with also different levels of our society, I think it's very important.
Iako nagrade daju neku vrstu kredibiliteta i priznanja, meni je bilo fascinirajuće kad si mi ispričala da si bila poticaj ili nekakva muza za istraživanje drugih stručnjaka. Spomenula si da su uzeli dio tvog rada više puta.
Yeah. The recent which happened, and I was really glad about it, like I work for years already on the underwater noise pollution. I try to understand how it's happening, because also Dubrovnik is one of the cities, especially in the summertime, where is lots of ferries and boats and everything happening. This resonates very strongly inside of the water, especially because the sound travels 5 to 7 times wider and longer in the water than in the air. So through all this, and then also, very quickly in the ocean and sea, we don't see nothing anymore. After 50 meters, it's already very blurry. At 200 meters, is already twilight. So the sun doesn't go so far deep down. So all the creatures and everything what lives, it communicates and speaks with each other and chit-chats through different ways, and this is mostly sound. So I developed a body of the work which I call Aquatocene. It's kind of referring to the epoch of the world which is called Anthropocene. So with this work, Aquatocene, I was really trying to bring up these like changes and challenges which they are happening in the oceans and seas, and how we can hear or do something about that. Because the sound pollution is one of the most stupidest pollution, because this already with different machinery or different ways how the machinery would be put into the boats could be changing very quickly the soundscapes also. And then these two scientists from Taiwan, they found I brought one scientific paper on that, and they found this paper online, and they asked me if they can refer to me as their inspiration instead of their, and if they can use my conceptual frame of Aquatocene, which was for me a big honor also. And I think it's great to see that, because, when I started to work in the field, I was the one who was going to the scientists and trying to persuade them why they should work with me. So I think it's very great when I see that this is also happening in contra, that they're also coming, asking me that we can connect, and so on. And that's why I'm also happy to have this kind of long-year collaboration with Gino Šutić from UR Instituta also, because he helped me, he gave me the space in the lab. He also did teach me a lot of kind of lab stuff, how to do some specific protocols and so on. So I think this kind of collaborative processes are very important to have.
Radiš dosta sa mladima na fakultetu i radila si s mladima u UR Institutu sa klubom mladih znanstvenika. Osim toga, saznala sam da si uvrštena u kurikulum za srednje škole u Hrvatskoj. Koliko ti znači pružati mentorstvo i nekako usmjerenje mladim ljudima koji se žele baviti sa znanošću?
I think it's important to share the knowledge also, because especially when I was younger, I was very active also in some international platforms which they have been more about the hacking and interconnecting different knowledges. So this helped me a lot to develop my way of talking, my way of thinking, and it was done through many different workshops. Like I learned how to work in the labs also because I was on these different experiences. Like with bacteria, we organized event in India, in National Institute for Biology, or in Indonesia, and so on. So through this kind of short dives in immersiveness into this kind of topics, it gives you this kind of perspectives also. And I think that yes, we do live in the time where we should be specialized, but I think that sometimes we also have to have holistic kind of view on the situation, because together with this kind of specialization of somebody who knows something very specific, which is very important of course also, and with somebody who knows how to put this general, then together in the group dynamics it's really possible to develop further. So I think it's important to understand and just be truthful towards yourself, and also what I always try to say, it's like to not be afraid of somebody who is very different.
Imaš iskustva i sa rezidencijama, jedna od njih je bila i ova u Dubrovniku, gdje si surađivala sa Tanjom Minari. Kako je to prošlo i kakav je proces kad surađuješ interdisciplinarno sa raznim umjetnicima, znanstvenicima?
So Tanya Minari was really good because, I really wanted to work with somebody who is skilled in machine learning and to go more into artificial intelligence and understand what to do. Because, when we gather the data, when you put sensors into the water, already in 1 or 2 hours you have lots of information. And then I wanted to compare this data which was done on the short term, I call them snapshots data, with data which is old for 30, 40, 50 years, which is collected through Copernicus or different platforms. You can have all this information. And then, as one person, you can never go to read all that through. So with Tanya, who is very skilled in programming and in machine learning, it was really good because we could merge this kind of interest and we could sonify and do the visual representation of the data which we recorded into something much more maybe abstract, but on the other hand also showing to the people how quickly these changes are happening. So with Tanya, we have been mostly working on that and also on understanding, so we did one project which was called Epionea Future Adriatic Sensing, which was done in the frame of Start for Water European platform through UR Institut. With UR Institut, Gino was calling the challenge the Zero Pollution Adriatic. So thematically, we have been looking into the sea urchins and their development problematics also, and abnormalities of behavior which happens because of human pollutants, and how this is bringing all the stressors. But because, one thing is this situation, and I did experimentation and protocol and everything together with Filip Grgujević in the lab. But then with Tanya, we wanted to go further with this, because this is as I said, also in the lab you get some information, but then we have to understand in bigger context what to do with this, Because, I understand the intensity of the red color depends on what is next to it also. It's never just it can never be only one thing without the whole together, and this is the thing which ecology is also based on. And that's why I think I like to work on these interdisciplinary approaches, because, it's we can merge all these different knowledges and get a bigger picture of what is actually happening.
Baš kako smo ispomenuli, budući da si završila ekiparstvo i da voliš nekako holistički pristup stvarima, zanima me kako ti se sviđa znanstveni narativ trenutni i smjer kretanja. Ima li javnost dovoljno simpatije i razumijevanja prema tome što se dešava i što znanstvenici pokušavaju napraviti samostalno u grupama kroz izložbe? Kako to prenijeti javnosti na nekakav dobar i pozitivan način da to uzme odjek?
There are different ways how to do that, because there is different ways how to recreate the knowledge. One thing is the science papers, which they're very important, so the other scientists can see what these guys are doing, and also peer reviewing it, so the colleagues are checking if this is everything correct or not, Because, very quickly, I think that lots of experimentation should be done twice or three times, which is missing, because mostly everybody gets grants only for first experiment. The secondary research is not so open many times. But then you have different variations. There is science communication, NASA astrobiology, for instance. They have amazing science communication because, the data which they get from the moon, picture of the moon, before it's published to the public, it's much different, because of course they have artists and people working on this kind of knowledge, how to present this also to the wider public. So I think everything should be done like that, and there is also a lot of opportunities in citizen science, which especially, to go back to UR Institut and what we did and with the workshop which we have been showing, and when I come to work with this Klub Mladih Znanstvenika, I think it's very important because we many times work also on different techniques of citizen science. And this citizen science has this kind of openness to enter topics which they have to get to know, and it's also opening up to the public.
Također, kroz projekte ste radili nekakve okrugle stolove i međusektorska razmišljanja, poimanja prije istraživanja koje ste radili. Koliko vam pomaže osluhivati probleme kroz sektorski pogled i nekakav strukovnu ulogu u svemu tomu?
I think it's always important because, these kind of roundtables, they give you also perspective where we are. And also, it's not that we will have to agree on everything, because this is not the way how we should think, I think it's important to, especially for young colleagues also, that they learn how to debate. And not just debate as politicians, selling stuff, but just really debating problematics, understanding what is the argument, what is the fact, and how to work about that. Because I think that in this today's society, with all the social media and everything what starts to happen, that opinion is sometimes the same as the fact, and this is so far from each other. So in this kind of context, I think that this even small round table, only 10 people can push somebody to think differently. And I think that this is, especially for younger colleagues and working with STEM and education, it's very needed, because one thing is somebody is just learning, but then when it's the round table, I hear what they think also. Because, in workshops I also try to recreate these kind of moments, but it's different always. And when we say, okay, now we will debate, then you see how much the knowledge which was transferred through the university or through school or through these informal educational programs is actually resonating in the heads of the young colleagues.
Sastavljala si također uređaj za promatranje ciklusa kisika na morskom dnu. Kako je to funkcioniralo i kako si uopće došla do te ideje?
So we have been working on benthic chambers, is called the system which we worked on, and it's like, I found out the word and I use it lots of times, aquaformings. And this is like, as humans we are terraforming the earth which is around us, we also aquaforming the water. And especially when me and Gino, we have been working on the project Aquaforensic, where we looked mostly into the chemical / pharmaceutical pollutants. I started to be also interested in all other topics, and then I think with oxygen, it's something that we don't think about it as something which is inside of the ocean, but there is so many oxygen inside of it, and also most of the oxygen we breathe is coming out of the ocean, done with the smallest plant, with algae which they are producing it. So this is few facts which they are mostly forgotten, or yes, forests are super important, but there is so much of this coming from there. And then with all this, especially when we started to work here in Starts for Water with motor oil, I started to realize how thick the layers of that are. And when these thick layers are, nothing can penetrate through it. So this means that there is also oxygen lack of it. So with benthic chamber, it's a chamber where you put it like this into and what I like, it gives you information about what is happening with sediment and with the water. So you put it over that as like a cup. You put the sensors in, and then we have been doing different experimentations. But this is still in very experimental phase. And I hope, because I know that Gino also has plans, and Philip, that they will develop this further in UR Institut. I'm always curious how this will go further.
Budući da si radila na 2 faksa, zanima me što misliš o mladim generacijama i mladim budućim kolegama, stručnjacima. Vidiš li promjenu u razmišljanju? Je li im lakše? Je li im dostupnije?
I would say like this, I see that there is lots of eco-anxiety happening, and that the younger generation is much more aware of everything, how damaging the humans we are, in the way how we are navigating our cities, our villages, our living. And I speak a lot about this with younger colleagues, especially on the conferences or in doing the projects, how to navigate even that, because, sometimes we feel, what could I do, and then we try to find the ways how to navigate that. So through that I develop a way of working which is called empathic strategy. So it's like methodology how to recreate better connection with the specific environments or creatures.
Zanima me također koliko ti je pomoglo, obrazovanje kroz institucije, ali čini mi se da si dosta učila iz prakse i kroz nekakve alternativne načine. Koliko ima nekakvih mogućnosti da se to napravi kroz institucije obrazovne i zapravo na koji način bi mladi mogli potaknuti takve stvari? Kako si se izborila s tim alternativnim načinima učenja?
This is something which I still struggle also, and it's a really good question. Because it's really hard to find the best way how to navigate that, there are some... The easiest is always when you are in the new department at some university, because the department is new, there is lots of changes kind of possible. There's a lot of this kind of international or inter-institutional connections, and this is also helpful. Because the order in the institution, not everybody is the most flexible, I would say, because of the inner system or whichever. So I think that's why these kind of alternatives, not alternative, but just informal structures, as UR Institut, as Centro za Mlade, as all these different places are very important because, I think it's good to have both, that it coexists, so it's, so it's important because, it's like, yes, for me, this informal way of education was really helpful. It helped me to develop, and now I can also do, now I'm like actually also giving classes at universities, which I think is also very good, and I'm really glad that I can do that and to bring these different points of view to different generations.
Ima li nekakve promjene u državnim strukturama? Da li se više gleda na okoliš? Jesi li primijetila da ljudi žele malo više se osvrnuti danas na to? I imaš li nekakve možda suradnje u tom smislu da ti se neko javio nakon izlaganja ili izložbe?
Many times. Because, the topics which I deal with, they're not the easiest topics, Especially when with Gino we worked on this pharmaceutical kind of pollutants, because, this is something which we all take, I'm taking pills also. So we always try to say that, yes, we don't want to be the ones who will be preaching others how to navigate that, but it's just the way how the system is done is maybe not the best. And I'm really glad that Gino got now this award also for his development further, because he went further to develop antibiotics which they are not so damaging to the environment, and so on, because especially in medicine, as an example, when we take the pills, 80% of the pill which we intake, it goes out of us, it goes into the waters, into the ocean and the sea, and it ends up on our plates, I would say, when we eat the fish. So how to optimize is very important, and sometimes we just don't go there just because of the economic reasons or situations, but so it's a long topic, and I'm always glad when people contact me also on this, because I think that, and I try to convey this message always with all the young colleagues also, that we just have to understand that, if we will not move something, and, that with our kind of exchange, we can at least help each other to understand where we are and to find some better, maybe more empathic and more better solidary world for everybody.
Za kraj te moram pitati da pošalješ nekakvu poruku našim mladima, jer sigurna sam da bi im dobro došla poruka od nekoga koji je etabliran u znanstvenom i umjetničkom smislu. Mm-hmm.
So I would just I would maybe repeat what I said, because I really think that it's very important to share the knowledge, to share the experience, to not be afraid to ask when we don't know, because, many times the best experience I had in collaboration with scientists was actually when I asked a question which nobody knew the answer, and then we went to research and looked into that. And don't be afraid to show your knowledge, and don't be afraid to ask for more and to ask when you don't understand.
Hvala ti, Robertina, puno, želimo ti puno uspjeha i nadam se da ćemo se još sresti u Dubrovniku.
Hvala i vama.
I tebi.
I tebi. I ja se nadam da će još ta suradnja sa Dubrovnikom se nastaviti i da će se još kakva zanimljiva zgodba dogoditi. Zanimljiva priča dogoditi. Jer zgodba je slovenačke, ne?
Nema veze, može i zgodba i priča.
Može zgodba i priča zajedno.
Da. Dragi gledatelji, hvala vam što ste bili uz naš STEM podcast. S nama je bila Robertina Šebjanič. Pratite nas za još puno zabavnih i zanimljivih priča.